Get this party started. You ready?
Let's go.
Let's go. Welcome back to Lake Fork Marina. Another Friday night seminar. We got some new faces in the crowd tonight.
We got some ugly faces.
That's usually pretty true around here. But we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. It's awesome to be here. It's a great time to be here. First thing I would say, not to you guys because y'all are here, y'all get it. But to any of you that are out there that have been waiting, like, when do I come to Lake Fork? Like, now.
Yeah.
Now. Like, it's fishing really good. We want to give a shout out to Lake Fork Marina right up front for letting us host this thing here. We really appreciate them letting us use their facility, and what a great facility it is. They got the best lodging on the lake. They got arguably the best restaurant on the lake. They got arguably the best tackle shop on the lake. They got great boat ramps.
A lot of arguing going on.
But, you know, let's talk a little bit here in the beginning. Let's just kind of kick it off with current conditions. For all you guys that are in the room right now, if y'all are going out tomorrow, you want to know what's going on, you want to know how we've been catching our fish all week, that's what we're going to kind of go
Lots of current.
Yeah.
Lots of current.
Well, you on it tonight, ain't you?
Yeah. There's a lot of current. There's a lot of current. All the gates are open.
all of them are open. There's current coming in, there's current going out. A lot of current.
There's floaters. There's turtles floating down the lake.
But it's kind of interesting right now because it is May, and we're starting to get to that kind of that May thing where, man, there's a lot of different ways to do it good and to catch good fish and catch a lot of fish. Mm-hmm. And me and you talk almost on a daily basis about how we're catching them and what we're catching and all that, and we are doing completely different things right now.
Yep.
What are you doing?
I am.
Talk to me about how your bite is. Come on.
Okay, so I'm starting out every morning throwing topwater. I'm throwing a big walking bait, but I'm not doing it for a long time. You know, I'll tell you what's kind of tight on my deck. I've got a big walking bait. I've got a big swim bait. I've got a square bill, and I've got a frog. And so if I get out there and I can't really get the shad spot, and then I've got a big glide bait, a floating glide bait. If I get out there and I'm not really on the shad spawn for say, some morning it's happening, some morning it's not.
And you guys have probably, some of y'all that watch have heard some of our talks about the main lake shad spawn, the gizzard shad spawn, the shallow points on the main lake. If you watch the live coverage on Bassmasters, you saw a bunch of it go down. But for those of you that don't know, these are kind of main lake super shallow points that kind of run out into the lake pretty good ways.
Yeah. And last week we talked about the big spook being a really big deal, and I think that played a huge part in this tournament.
Yeah, it did. So you're running the shallow deal, looking for the big shad spawn.
We're looking for any kind of shad spawn I can find. You know, I've got a series of points. Like today, for instance, the wind came out of the north, so I wasn't fishing anything that I have been fishing. I was fishing some stuff that was north facing. It was just a conditions deal.
Windier the better. Like you're looking for the wind.
We're looking for the wind, of course. You know, if there's birds, I'm going to pull in there. You know, let me give you an example. There was 2 points today. One's here, one's here. There were birds here. I pulled in. I was going to this point, but I pulled over to this point because there were birds and we didn't catch anything. We pulled over to this point and we just started catching them. So the birds may throw you off a little bit. We're looking for the shad spawn. The threadfin are spawning pretty good. Your windy bridge corners are going to be pretty good. 550, all of them pretty much. Any kind of main lake stuff. One thing that I think is kind of important is the better the spawning creek, the better the point.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you know, so if you're some of these areas that hold a whole lot of bass, just a great population, which is kind of hard to say out here because it's pretty much everywhere.
A bird, a little caney.
And I don't know, did you notice at one point when they zoomed out on the map on the Bass Live, it was like everywhere. They were everywhere. It was just like they were everywhere. They were catching them in muddy water. There's no clear water, but they were catching them as far north as you can go and as far south as you can go. Catch them on a jerk bait. I mean, they were jerking, ripping, twitching. They were doing everything you can. And I'm doing sort of the same thing. I'm not throwing a jerk bait because we don't really throw jerk bait in May in dirty water here. That's kind of a...
But they did.
They did.
And it worked.
It worked well.
That's kind of to the point. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So we're kind of chasing the squirrel a little bit like we tend to do. But basically what's going on, Ronnie's concentrating on these main lake shallow points, and I'm doing the same thing. The point that I've been starting every morning on is just, it's kind of got like 3 sides to it, so it always has wind, and that's why I like to start there, because I know I'm always going to get wind on there. So whether there's birds or not, I'm starting on that point. Most mornings there's some herons there. Mm-hmm. But I can catch them just about every morning on that point. But this is a threadfin deal, so I'm actually using a popping bait. Like, I'm using a Yellow Magic a little bit, but I'm using the 6 cent Splashback 70 popper. and we're catching fish on that topwater popper. So it's kind of a real similar deal, but it's a little bit different. And now I'm catching some smaller fish with these. So if you guys are fishing tournaments, that popper on that threadfin shad spawn, I mean, you might catch a limit of good under the slot fish in 5 minutes on that deal. I mean, it happens real quick. But that's just my first hour of the morning or so, and then I kind of go do something different.
Small jerkbait has been working pretty good.
That's where the boys got it from, right there. He told them about it. He told them about that jerkbait deal.
And I'm throwing a square bill.
Got to be small.
Yeah.
The bigger ones are not. They won't even look at it.
Wow. I'm throwing a square bill a lot. You know, we're catching some pretty good sized fish on a square bill. And then I'm throwing a frog. I'm still, if that deal's not panning out for me or it slows down real quick, I'll run back to pretty much anywhere you want to go right now and throw a frog, you're going to catch fish.
So, yeah, the shad spawn deal, if that doesn't get going pretty quick, you run into the frog.
I run and throw the frog. And with that frog, I could mix it up and throw the popper. I'm throwing the frog because I want to throw the frog, but I could throw the popper and catch him on the popper.
What are you throwing a frog at? I mean,
I'm throwing any creek that's got vegetation. And man, and it's from indentions in the bank on the main lake to big creeks like Birch. I mean, anywhere I throw a frog, I seem to catch fish right
I
now.
can get one bite on a frog, and then I don't ever get bit again.
Well, we're catching a lot. I mean, kind of.
Yeah, they're biting the topwater baits, and you can, if there's flooded vegetation, I think is what we're talking about. Not underwater vegetation necessarily. That's not really what I'm concentrating on with that deal.
I am some on coontail and some of the eelgrass that's starting to pop up in some of the areas. I'm throwing the frog in it, but the gator grass, tater grass, that's kind of reeds, the sex cane. That's kind of what I'm really focusing on.
That stuff that's on the surface that grows out off the bank.
I can get them to blow up on a buzzbait, but I can't get them to touch
Yeah, and I've caught some buzzbait fish. I haven't thrown the buzzbait a lot.
So basically, just throw whatever you want to.
Yeah.
That's what we're telling you.
Yeah.
Now,
but
there's some other deals that are going on that are just starting, and there's a couple of them that me and him are both fond of each. Of course, I like topwater, but I mean, what's more fun than watching fish blow up on topwaters? And this is the best time of year to throw a topwater. But Ronnie's doing something he really likes, and I'm doing something I really like. And my deal is I'm starting to flip that grass. I'm doing some flipping with some big weights and going through it, and we're getting some good bites doing that. And this is specifically the flooded vegetation that grows out off the bank. The above the water vegetation, not the underwater, not the coontail and hydrilla, but all the pondweed and stuff that grows out from the bank and reaches out. And the deeper water it reaches out to, the better it seems to be. That's been my deal. I'm just going to areas where I caught them spawning a month ago, like northern areas of the lake where they were spawning a month ago. Those seem to be the best ones. Wherever that grass reaches out to 4, 5 to 6, 7 foot of water, I can catch fish flipping that grass. Now you're doing something that you really love doing. I know you're like crazy about this. It's probably your favorite way to catch them.
It is my favorite way to catch them.
And that's what you're going to talk about in detail. So I'm going to turn this over to you and let you get going on this.
So I've been looking for this bite for a couple weeks now, and I'll see some schools of fish out offshore. There's just not been a lot, and there's still not just big numbers of fish offshore right now. As he said, the shad spawn deal, and I'm kind of concentrating in areas that I know that those big bass are chasing gizzard shad, and anywhere that's got a really good spot, that's got a long point, I'm starting to look out there. And I've been looking for probably two weeks ago, I guess, I rigged all my crankbait rods up. So I'm throwing a big crankbait a lot. This is probably my very favorite way to catch bass at Lake Fork. In my opinion, the best way to catch the 5 biggest bass, besides a big swim bait or a big spook up shallow, is going to be a big crankbait. I'm pretty much throwing the 6 cents Cloud9 C25, and then I'm throwing the C20, but I'm throwing the C25 a lot more. Those fish, most of the fish I'm catching are in about 17 to 20, 22 foot of water.
Shameless plug. If you want to order some baits for 6 cents, including the C25 or the splashback popper, and stuff we're talking about for 6 cents, we got a code for you. They got a little promo box on the checkout screen at 6centsfishing.com. Yeah. At 6centsfishing.com, you punch that code, your Lake Fork guide, you get a 10% discount.
And these are
her favorites.
These are the two I'm catching.
That's the only 2 colors that matter.
Yeah, these are the 2 colors. This is the C20 and this is C25. This has kind of been our better bait. What I'm throwing this on is I'm throwing a 710 heavy action Kistler rod. They make a composite rod that goes from graphite to fiberglass, and I think it's a big deal. And kind of the debate on that is, man, if I'm using fiberglass, I can't feel as well. There's some truth to that, but there's also there's something about right now, and I heard Combs talk about it during the tournament. I didn't get to watch much of the tournament. You probably didn't either. We were both working, and but I did hear him talk about that they were missing the bait and they weren't getting it good. You know, he didn't know if it was a color deal or whatever. Well, I'm having the same issue. I had one yesterday on 6 Cents makes a chartreuse sexy shed type of color, and that's one of my very favorites. It's just got a dark blue back, and then it's kind of the same. It's a little more orange. But I had one yesterday that got it pretty deep down in its skull, and it got it pretty good. But the rest of them are just kind of getting on the outside of the mouth. So I'm throwing the fiberglass rod. It's a 710 heavy action rod with a ton of bend in it. Throwing 15-pound fluorocarbon line. And on this big C25, well, both of them, I'm throwing a 6-speed reel. You could throw a 5-speed reel on this. I don't really know what the point in throwing a 5 is. You could throw a 7, but you better be a bad son gun because it's going to wear you out. Looking for main lake points. I'm looking for long points. And one of the biggest deals is if I don't see them, I'm not fishing. I mean, they're like period.
On your electronics.
If I don't see them, I'm looking on side scan. I'm keeping my side scan on about 60 foot out, and I'm looking for them on my Humminbird electronics. I've got it on I can't remember the number, but it's a brown palette, and they'd show up as white blur. And then on my down scan palette, and I'll show you guys. I'll actually pass my phone around and show you guys. I'll show them that picture.
Yeah,
from yesterday. Had a pretty decent. It's actually on there. See if y'all can see that right there. But you can pass that around. That's a decent school of fish, and if you land that school of fish right there, that's a 40-pound bag. That's a 38 to 40-pound bag of fish.
Nice. Yeah,
we only had one fish that came out of that school that was under 5 pounds. Everything else was over. One of them still running around with a crankbait in its mouth. It broke us off trying to get it in the net. It just shook, and I think it was because the teeth. They're swiping at it. There's a lot of sand bass. You're getting a lot of bites. You're losing a lot of fish. But if I don't see a decent amount of fish on my graph, if I see 2, 3, 4 bass, I'm probably just going to keep on going. In my mind, my time is better spent looking for other schools of fish. Now, I've got about 6 or 7 schools of fish. I'm catching fish out of 3 different spots out of all those schools of fish. And with that being said, that I know of, none of the areas that I am fishing had an Elite Series Pro on them. It's my best area, to my knowledge. And again, I didn't watch a lot of the live coverage. I did come out here on Sunday and kind of follow some of the guys around. In fact, Keith Combs pulled up on a spot that I'd been checking for about 2 weeks, and I could catch 2 or 3 fish off on a Carolina rig, but I never really could get on them. He caught some fish on, but they kind of got the right conditions. A day like today, the bite's not going to be great on that deal. I would encourage you on a day like today when it's cloudy and you got a decent amount of wind to focus not only on the, like we had some big ones out deep today, but we also had some big ones up shallow, frog fishing and throwing a spook type bait. But the biggest deal is finding the fish and making sure they're not just, one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here. You want to see them kind of all together. If they're all together, especially if there's bait around, they're probably going to be biting. That crankbait to me is the fastest way to get them to bite. A lot of guys like to drag a Carolina rig. I don't really throw a Carolina rig deep as much. I throw a football jig. I throw a big flutter spoon. And the other thing that I've been catching fish on is just a big swim bait, just kind of any of your favorite 7-inch hollow body, something like that, and I'm throwing it on a 1-ounce weight and just throwing it down and letting it get to the bottom, hopping it. You just pop it once and just give it a slow retrieve. And that's kind of my cleanup stuff. After I've kind of cranked these fish, especially if I lose one. If I lose one down there, if I lose it right at the boat, it's a little different. But if I lose one down there while it's got it in its mouth and I feel her head shaking and that fish comes off, or my customer's got one and its head shaking, and for us, the first thing we do when you guys say you got
got
one,
your phone back in this group?
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty
shady.
crazy. Yeah,
that trooper's the one I was worried about the most.
I'm telling you.
But when I feel that head shaker, I see a customer's rod bow up, or I got one, or there he is, or anything. First thing I do is I look at the rod tip, see that rod bowed up, and I see that head shaking. If they lose that fish, my next cast probably isn't going to be a deep diving crankbait. It might be a football jig, or it might be, or will likely be, a big swim bait. And it's just to give them a little something different. I think a lot of times when you lose those big fish in the schools, it kind of spooks them a little bit. And I don't know if there's any explanation to it. And I don't think that's the case 100% of the time. but it happens. And if you get a decent school of 10, 12, 15 fish, you don't. Last thing you want is them to stop after the second bite. But Main Lake, all these areas are where I have been catching fish up shallow. In fact, everything I'm fishing, I have at least at some point throughout the spring been catching them up on the bank where that point starts at, and catch them on a big swim bait or a big walking type bait. And I'm just following them out, and they're starting to show up. Yesterday was a lot better. We had the sun, and they've been a lot better today. We caught 3. They were all 6 pounds plus, but we caught 3 out there. Didn't see a lot. You could see them, but you would see one up here, one over there, one over there. They weren't really. You get those high skies and that wind calms down, they start to kind of hunker down to the bottom. The closer they are, the tighter they are, the higher to the high spot of the point or the ridge or whatever, the hump, whatever you're fishing, the more likely you are to catch them.
And the best part about this deal is it's coming.
It's coming.
Like, this is not even scratching the surface of what's going to happen out there.
And I would tell you that the baits that I would always have tied on is I will always have, if I'm out here and I'm throwing this bait right here, and this is, like I said, this bait right here is from about, I don't know, this bait will get down there. This bait will get way down there.
That's the C20?
This is the C20. Yeah. And it's a good 12 to 16 foot of water bait, especially if you're making really long casts. And what I'll tend to do is I'll get upwind, I'll throw behind the boat downwind as far as I can, and as soon as it hits the water, I'll hit my trolling motor. Or if it's calm, I'll throw it, and as soon as it hits the water, I call it kicking off. But I'll kick off, and I'll just, if I throw out over there, I'll have my trolling motor head pointed that way. As soon as it hits the water, I'll punch that trolling motor and get it going that way and get my line kind of going down. And one of the biggest
size line?
I'm throwing 15-pound fluorocarbon. And one of the biggest misconceptions in crankbait fishing is you got to burn it to get it down. How many of you guys do that when you're throwing a crankbait? You start reeling real fast to get it down, right? We've all heard that. Well, what actually will end up happening is your line will start to drag. You'll start to get a bow. This bait can only get down there so fast. So instead of that line being straight down, it'll start to bow. Does that make sense? Because you're reeling it too fast. So you get a good steady retrieve, and like I said, I'll kick it off with the trolling motor. I'll long line it. I'm not above strolling. In fact, I think it's one of the best methods that there is to fishing. Those fish getting 25, 30 foot of water, and you can't get this down here, and you long line them or stroll them, and they haven't seen this in a while because your average person isn't doing it. And another thing about
Does everybody know what long line or strolling is?
You throw all the line out, throw your line way past the point, let it all out with the trolling motor, click your button, take off with the trolling motor, stop, turn around and reel it in. Or you just click it and keep going with the trolling motor, whichever you prefer.
That's trolling, though.
That's trolling, yeah. And you can troll, as long as you're not in a tournament, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. But, and here's something you got to remember with this. Your average dude, and I've got these guys in my boat every day, everybody's whining. This right here will wear you smooth out. So I want to give you a tip, real quick tip.
It's a great tip.
So you're standing up on your boat. This is your gunnel. I know the camera can't see, but this is your gunnel. Okay? I'm going to make my cast as far out there. We don't have a rod up here, do we? I'm going to make my cast as far out there as we can. All right? And then I'm going to stick my foot right here on that gunnel, and I'm going to bury my rod tip all the way down. I'm going to have that rod butt right here, my reel right here, and I'm going to crank just this way. Does that make sense?
My rod's going to be on the opposite
My rod's going to be on the opposite side of my foot. My foot's going to take all that pressure off. Does that make sense? I'll do that. I'll make a long cast. I'll stick my rod straight down by my trolling motor, put my foot up on the trolling motor bracket, and bend over, kind of a kneel and reel effect. So it gives you the same thing, but it takes a lot of that pressure off. And if you're throwing it behind the boat, you make that long cast over the left side of the boat. Same thing, you just put that right foot up there, put that foot down, and you keep that rod tip down in the water. Something I saw yesterday, I want to address this, folks at home and folks here. There's no need to set the hook on a crankbait like a jig. Dude, yesterday, bless his heart, man, the biggest fish that we saw yesterday, he's reeling it, and it bites, and he stops, and he reels down and lifts up, and then he just wham, just like this. Now, I'm not telling you that if you've been doing that for 30 years that you're going to lose every fish. I'm just telling you that you're wrong. That's not the right way to do it. those bass need to absorb that bait, and that's why that fiberglass rod, in my opinion, is such a big deal. I can go out there and I can throw a graphite rod, and I can feel a lot better. You know, I can get down there and feel the bottom a little bit better, or a lot bit better sometimes. But it doesn't have as much of a parabolic bend, and it doesn't allow the fish to get it in their mouth. I mean, you're moving that crankbait at a pretty good speed, and a lot of times they're just snapping at it. And so what I tend to do is I'm cranking, and when I feel the fish bite, I'm sitting here cranking. I'll just kind of pull into them. I dig these. These are big hooks. I mean, these are number 2 treble hooks. These are monsters. And I'll dig that crankbait. I'll pull into them, but
you pull, you don't jerk.
Pull, I don't jerk. I don't shoot any slack in my line. My rod goes from bent to bent, even more. It's already bent because I'm throwing this big old thing. But my guy today said weighed 8 pounds.
Got a hubcap on the front end of it.
Yeah, and so I don't change anything on this crankbait. This crankbait comes up right straight out of the box, about as good as you can get it. I think chartreuse blueback. Now let me say this. This color and this color, and then I'll show you one other color. This is a Strike King color, but it's called Sexy Blueback Heron. This is another really good color. And then this color right here, you know, citrus. This is another jam up color right here.
That's chartreuse, citrus chartreuse.
Yeah, that's another. And we can sit here and play tackle box all night, but
my kids love to play tackle box. They have since they were bitty.
This is one of my favorite boxes.
My kids got a bunch of old baits. They keep in them little old Play-Doh tackle boxes, and they'll literally go in the living room and just pull up and start playing tackle box in the living room.
That's awesome. Those are good kids. You got great kids.
Thanks, man.
The other thing is, when you hook that fish, you need to keep that rod down. I don't get mad at my customers. I never get mad at my customers. Man, but it sure hurts my heart when they lose my big old fish. You know, I'm like, dude, man, like, you know, like yesterday would have shaped up to be one of the best. We probably would have had a dozen fish over 6 or 7 pounds in the boat yesterday if they could have got the fish to the boat, and they would get them right there, and I'd go keep it down, and they'd keep their rod tip down. But there's a whole nother method of keep it down. You gotta keep the fish in the water. That's a when they're doing this. That's a whole lot, especially when you got a fiberglass rod, because that fiberglass rod's got a lot more give in it, you know. And you should be throwing this bait as far as you can possibly throw it. They're coming out of 17, 18 foot of water, and they're shaking their head. And most of the time, the fish will, all but 1 or 2 of the fish I'm catching are over 5 pounds on this bait right now. And so getting that rod down, you know, even if you're on your knee and you're keeping that rod bent or down in the water until you get to the net or until you get to the boat. It's a really big deal to keep this thing. I mean, like almost my reel in the water. Because the second that fish is visible, yesterday we were losing them. I mean, if you saw the fish, that was about the last time you were going to see it. They would come up, and I mean, this guy had one of these crankbaits that missed him by about 6 inches in the face. And so that's a really big deal. And if you'll watch some of the pro, and I know Chad Pipkins caught that big old fish, and everybody's like, oh, he's playing it. That was a little extreme, but you got to play these fish out. You don't want to really pull these fish. You want to kind of, you know, a lot of times this hook right here is just buried in the side of their mouth. They're hitting this big old bait. I mean, this bait, again, man, this bait is freaking screaming through the bottom of that water, digging, just going all over the place, and they're just hitting it. You know, sometimes they got it way down in their goal, and they'll start to get it down deeper in their mouth. But right now, a lot of these fish are just barely getting skin hooked. And when you see an 8 or 9 pound fish come up, and you know, this is a great hook, but right here, that's only like a 1/0 hook individually.
Yeah.
That's
what I always tell everybody is this is a big old hook.
But that's not.
Yeah. And when all it's holding it.
And when you got an 8 pounder comes up 150 yards behind the boat and starts shaking its head, I mean, this is a lot of weight. So you got to keep them down. So that's kind of what I got on deep cranking. This is, everybody always asks me every day, what's your favorite weight? If you catch them one way, what would it be? 100%. This is my very favorite thing to do. I would rather catch them doing this than anything. And I'll take my best 5 on this versus almost anything except for that big spook, you know, big swim bait bite. They're kind of the same fish, I think. But anybody got any questions for me?
What swim bait do you use?
A lot. That's like a 4-day conversation. A lot. like a lot of swim
You have to have a
baits.
favorite color.
Favorite color? Light hitch.
A lot. I don't know.
Light hitch is my favorite color.
That's I'm not a good person to ask on that because I throw a whole lot of swim baits, like a whole lot of swim baits, and I don't have like, I love a line through, like a big 7-inch line through. I love that, but then I like a 5-inch on a flashy hook too. But then I also like a 7-inch on a 1-ounce jig head, and I like hard plastic swim baits. So the answer would be yes. I love swim baits, but this is my passion.
As far as like the line throughs go, which is a great way to attack the shallow points,
The Felon
ride
is
real
my
high in the
favorite.
water column. The smash Felon has been as hot as any of them out here. Weedless baits. We're getting that time of year where the water's warm enough. That big hollow belly. I know I've been preaching a lot, but it'll catch them. I mean, it has just a very unique action for a swim bait. It'll catch them. And the big ones, the big 7-inch, the weedless convict, and there's a bunch of weedless baits out there in that size category that are real good. But if I had to tell you 2 to go throw on a shallow point right now, it would be the big hollow belly weedless, if you want to throw a weedless one, or the line through Felon.
The Felon has been
Really good.
freaking awesome.
And if you want to go out deep and throw swim baits, the big hollow belly is actually a really good bait to put on a 1-ounce jig
Very
head too.
good.
It's a hollow belly is kind of all the tour guys, their favorite bait to put on a 1-ounce jig head out deep is a hollow belly. A lot of them use bass tricks and stuff like that, but the Smash Tech hollow belly just came out last year, and I will take that Smash Tech hollow
That's what
belly
I'm throwing out
against any other bait on a jig head out deep. I will.
Nice.
It's really good. Anybody got questions on deep cranking?
Any questions
Hold on
on
before you
deep
go. Any questions on deep cranking at all? Okay,
cranking? This is deep cranking. This isn't like 6XD. This is like
as deep as you can get it.
as deep as you can get it cranking.
One thing I want to ask you, and this is kind of kicking around in my head, that gizzard shad spawn deal.
Yep.
Do you think it's on the? Okay, so if you
I
started
don't think
here
it-
and
I
there's a
don't
little
think it
bit and then it
stops.
peaked, do you think it's going this way
So
already?
here's my
Because I kind of think it's going this way.
Here's
now.
my theory on the gizzard shad. I don't necessarily think it's a spawn that we're chasing out here. I think what we're chasing is a group of nomadic fish that'll push these. I think these fish that I'm catching out deep, you know where I'm going with this. These fish I'm catching out deep, if they find a big school of gizzard shad, they'll run them up that point. Because I'll catch these same fish in June, July, and August, Bluebird Day, as hot as it can get, and nothing going on, and all of a sudden you'll see thump.
There you go with the thunk.
Thunk. And then
He did call me after that last seminar and go, thunk.
yeah, so you'll see that one gizzard shad jump, and then all of a sudden 5, 6, 7, 8 fish. And by the way, we caught one last week, almost 10. We pulled up after lunch. I'm idling. I can't run. I'm idling, and I see like 6 blowups, and I see thump. And I said, guys, grab your baits, grab your baits. And they threw right at it, and I threw over here with a big glide bait, multi-joint glide bait, and bam, this fish just did like a cartwheel. That sucker weighed 914, and freaking awesome. But I think it was way over. It was
I
like that
saw the
long.
picture. That sucker was, yeah.
That's a vicious story right there.
It was that long. And it's
Well, he's real short. That's only like 2.5 foot.
yeah. So it was huge. But
So as far as the shad spawn, answer me this.
as far as
On
the threadfin
shad
spawn, I think we got another month.
You think it's a
I think
full
we got
month
another-
left?
Yeah. I think if you look for it and you know what to look for, and one thing that's pretty cool, and I don't know if I love it. That deal doesn't really go away. Okay, so I'm gonna chase a squirrel real quick.
Here it goes. Here goes
I'm
the
gonna chase
squirrel.
the squirrel real quick. Brandon Polinick. Does anybody remember Brandon Polinick winning Sam Rayburn a few years ago? All right, that was a shad spawn deal. All he did was he caught him right here on that point or rock ledge, and then he just backed his boat way up and caught him. Right? They were the same fish. They're the same fish that were chasing bait early. He just backed up, and then the next morning here, and then backed up, and then the next morning here, backed up. He did that 4 days in a row, and he won. So I think what's going to happen is with the season lasting as long as it is, because we haven't had like these unreal, and I've had some freaking stupid, 35 to 38 pound 5-fish limits on the shad spawn, but we hadn't had a whole lot of mornings where I'm on a bridge corner and the wave hits the bridge corner and goes down and it's just covered in shad. I've had like 3 of those mornings. We'll get to a point, I think, where we're all talking in theory, we're talking fishing. we'll get to a point, I think, where that bridge is going to go up, that water's going to splash against that bridge corner, it's going to go down, it's going to be shad, and it's going to happen for about 2 weeks. But I'm not sure.
I would agree. That deal hasn't really
The water's done this. I mean,
the deal where you pull up
water's
even on a
all over
point,
the
you just
place.
see shad doing this everywhere. Like you haven't seen very much of that.
You haven't seen. You'll see it.
little bit.
You'll see it
Not
some
like we normally
mornings.
do.
Not like last year.
Or the
And
year
I wasn't
before,
out here
or the
last year.
before.
But I can tell you, 2011, 2012, me and Mark Pack had that deal to ourselves. We could run from one bridge, north end of one bridge, to north end of another bridge, and it would be like I always tell everybody, it's like diamonds glistening, and you'd see it all over the lake. And there's been a couple mornings where I've seen it, and I mean like you can't get a clean cast because of the shad. Every time you throw your bait out there, you're reeling in shad. But it's been maybe 7 days out of, and I fished. Me and Billy Bo, I fish 7 days a week. He fishes 5 or 6.
6. Yeah.
And I've seen it 7 days, and I'm looking for it, and I know where to look. And but I'm also keyed in on that big gizzard shad spawn, which I think the sun helps a lot. That sun pulls up and it pulls those big gizzard shad up a little bit. So, anyways, that's my spill. And I'm gonna go watch my son play baseball. And you know what I tell him before the game? I say, "Hey, dude, I only ask one thing: don't suck." That's it. Thanks, guys. I
See you,
appreciate
buddy.
it.
Thank you.
I've got some trips available. If anybody wants to go grind a big crankbait, call me.
Yeah, May, he does have a few dates available. Holler at him.
See you, bro.
Later, man. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how to locate the early morning threadfin deal.